Hi everyone, today we're going to be looking at a technique in MoGraph using the target effector. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to animate a camera flying through a load of clones. As the camera flies past, the clones are going to move out of the camera's way. Don't worry if you're new to MoGraph, because we'll be going over how to generate the clones and also how to randomize their position and their scale as well. So let's get started. First of all, I need a sphere from the primitive objects menu, and I'm just going to reduce the radius down to 50 centimeters. This is going to be our cloned object, so the next thing we need is the cloner tool from the MoGraph menu. Okay, we're going to need to make the sphere a child of the cloner object. To do this, if you just click and hold down on sphere, move your cursor up so it's on top of the cloner tool and that white arrow is pointing down, and then release a click, and you'll see that the hierarchy has changed in the object manager, and also you've got 3 spheres now instead of 1. So let's have a look at the cloner tool. If you go to the object tab, now you can see here that the mode is set to linear. It does this by default. We don't want this for our project, so I'm just going to change the mode here from linear to grid array. So now we've got clones going in all 3 directions. You can alter the amount of clones that you've got here in the count menu. So I'm going to type in 6 for the X, 6 again for the Y, and for the Z axis I'm just going to increase that slightly, so that's going to be 8. Okay, and also we need to increase the size. So on the X again I'm going to put in 1000. Let's see how that looks, and then yeah, that looks fine. And then in the Y I'm going to put in slightly less, 800, and in the Z I'm going to make it slightly longer. I'm going to make it 1500. Zoom out a little bit. Good. Now you can see here that the clones all look very uniformed and in line. So to remedy this, I'm going to bring in a random effector. Just make sure that before you bring in any effector, the cloner or the MoGraph object is selected in the object manager. So if you go to MoGraph, then effector, and then down to random, you can see in the cloner menu, if you go to effectors, the random effector will automatically appear. That's because you had the cloner object selected. Okay, let's have a look at a couple of the options in the random effector. If you head to parameter, you can see that by default the random effector will affect the position by 50 centimeters on each axis. Obviously you can change this, and you can also animate it if you so wish. I'm just going to increase the position on the Z, because you can see a couple of the lines, a couple of the columns are still slightly visible. So you can move these, and obviously just have a play around until you're happy with the clones. Now we'll have a look at scale as well. So you need to activate scale by clicking on that tick box. Now if I were to put in 1 on each axis here, you can see that it does randomize the scale of the object, but it's not how I want it. I still want my spheres to be spheres, so I need to tell the random effector to scale them on all 3 axes at the same time. To do this, what you need to do is click on uniform scale, and then you just increase the scale using this window. Let's see how that looks. Probably a bit less actually. I'll take it down to 0.4. But you can see that the spheres do remain spherical. I think that's all I need to do on the random effector. Now before we go any further, I'm going to start on the camera animation. So to do this, I'm just going to get a standard camera, and I'm just going to reposition the rotation back to 0 on the H and the P, and also the position on the X and Y as well. Don't worry too much about the Z at the minute. Okay, so my camera is going to fly from the left going through to the right. I'm going to attach it to a helix spline just to get a little bit more movement in there as it's flying through the clones. So if you go to the spline menu, click on the helix spline. Now I'm just going to hide the cloner and the sphere for the minute. I'm just going to click on these green ticks so they turn into crosses, and you'll see that in the viewport the clones will disappear. So you can see here that the helix has been brought in. However, it's been brought in the wrong direction basically. Because we're going to attach the camera to the spline, I need it to start on the left. And I don't know if you can see very clearly, but the axis is actually on the right hand side. This is telling me that we need to rotate it. So that first point will be on this side. To do this, the helix is already selected. I'm just going to rotate on the heading by 180 degrees. And there you go, it'll just flip straight round. So now when we attach the camera to it, the camera will attach from this side. Also, obviously, we need to increase the length of the helix as well. So if I remember rightly, I put in 1500. Let me just check that for the Z axis. Yes, I did. So for the helix, I'm actually going to increase its height to 2000, just so you've got a bit of overhang on each side. Now if I click on these crosses again, it will unhide my cloner, and then I'll just flip into the right view so I can position the helix right in the center. Great. So now what I need to do is tell the camera to attach itself to the helix. To do this, I'm going to need to get a tag. So if you select the camera object, go to tags, Cinema 4D tags, sorry, and then down to align to spline. Okay, now you can see in the attribute manager that it's asking us for a spline path. We need to tell it that it needs to attach to the helix spline. So go up to the object manager, click and hold down on helix, and drag it down into that spline path window, and you'll see the word helix pop up there. Then you can release a click, and you can see in the viewport that the camera has now attached itself to the helix spline. Okay, as you may well be aware, next to most of the parameters in the attribute manager you'll find a small empty circle. This means that these parameters can be animated, so we can easily set a keyframe for our camera just by control clicking on this empty circle in the position parameter. So I'm going to do that now. Before I do that, I'm just going to make sure my time slide is at 0. So if I just go ahead, hold down control and left click, you'll see that the empty circle turns into a red dot. That tells me that the keyframe has been set. So now if I move to the end of my animation, I'm going to type in 100% into the position. This position relates to the camera, by the way. Hold down control, left click again, and there you have it. You can see that how our camera has disappeared because it's jumped to 100% on the spline. So if I just rewind and play that back for you now. Okay, so that's our camera animation.